kind of a little bit different. We have a live audience in front of me, and we have our Zoom folks here. So thank you guys so much for joining us today. My name is Keith Richard, principal here at Nashua High School South. Nate Burns is over there running the computer. And we really appreciate you guys coming out this morning as we living in this unknown certainty of education during these times. Nate and I really thought it'd be important to have some board members hear from our teachers, how things are going, the challenges, the issues for remote, and then as we continue to discuss what hybrid learning might look like, what are the challenges and the obstacles that we might face as we transition to that. So this is entirely going to be run by our staff here. So we do have board members here on camera. I see Mrs. Zeem and Dottie Oden and Sharon Delio, and in the audience we have Heather Raymond and Jess Brown. So again, thank you guys for taking your time out of your busy schedules here to join us. So without further ado, I am going to kick it off, and Susan Rourke is going to come up and kick this off. Anybody who's coming to talk, you do have to sit up here so you can see the Zoom people can see it, and also this is being recorded by Channel 99, not live, Pete promised, but for maybe another show later on down the road. So without further ado, Susan Rourke.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Susan Rourke, and I am the English department head teacher for Nashua South, and I've also been a teacher. This is my 29th year, and my entire career has been here in the Nashua School District. So what today is about, it's about sharing information with our school board members, with each other, about this very, very unique and strange time that we're living in the world of education. And we as a group of teachers, and there are 10 of us on this panel, both on the screen and in this room, who would like to predicate all of our comments today with the notion that in a perfect world, every single one of us wishes that we could be in our classrooms with a full complement of students. That's what we want. That's why we went to undergrad school. That's why we went to graduate school. We love the energy of the classroom. We enjoy spending our days with teenagers. We really do. And that's what we wish for. But we also know the reality of a pandemic, and that we have been struggling and working harder than I think most of us have ever worked before to try to continue educating our students and making sure that learning is happening in this very bizarre time. We went out last March, and we thought we were going to be out for a week. We thought the schools were going to be deep cleaned, and then we'd all be back. And we very quickly realized that we had to completely shift the way we delivered instruction and curriculum. And that was a very intensive learning curve. But we made it work last spring. The good news is that we had time in the summer to make things work better, to perfect some of our skills. And we've been teaching remotely since early September. Remote teaching is not ideal. We all know that. But we have found ways to make it work for the vast majority of our students. And we are hoping and praying for the day that it's safe to come back to school and we can see all of our kids in front of us again. In the interim, it looks like we're all going to have to make some compromises. And some of those compromises might include some remote learning, some hybrid learning. And as we encounter that, that thing that's looming ahead of us that we haven't really tried out very well yet, we've been spending a great deal of our discretionary time educationally, and there's not that much discretionary time, but most of our time in PLCs, in department meetings, in our leadership meetings, have been all about what do we do now? When we get to hybrid, what comes next? And so today is really an opportunity for us to share with the school board members our sense of what comes next. We're going to hear first from some teachers who have already dipped their toes in the waters of hybrid learning. We have some CTE teachers who will share their experiences. We have a special ed head teacher who will share her experiences. And what we hope is that we will be completely honest with you. We're going to share the victories and the great aspects, but also some of the challenges. Then we're going to have some other classroom teachers talk to you about their experiences in remote learning and their concerns and hopes for hybrid learning. And again, telling you exactly what we see as benefits and where we see some of the challenges, and hoping that maybe together as an educational community of board members and teachers, not just English teachers, that we can put our heads together and maybe find ways to overcome some of the challenges. And we are also going to, hopefully, if we have time, share perhaps a short demo of what a hybrid class would look like, take you to a classroom here in the building that's set up for hybrid learning so you can see what it is, and to share what is uniquely the high school experience in remote learning and hybrid learning. Because educators are educators, but we all deliver instruction and function in different ways. And secondary is very different from elementary. And there are unique challenges at the high school that may or may not exist at other levels. And so we want to share that with you as well. And hopefully we will end with questions and answers where we will all share with you what we know and what we believe to be true. And we can work together to make sure that we are delivering instruction in the best way possible to our kids come semester 2, which begins on January 27th. So that's the overview of where we're going. And so I'd like to ask either of our CTE teachers or Mrs. Chamora, our special ed teacher, and Mr. Fenlon as well, who has worked, Mr. Froment, not Fenlon, sorry. Mr. Froment, yeah. Trust me, they're both Matts and Matt Fs. Mr. Froment, who's worked with the football team and seen kids coming into school in a different capacity, and would like to share that perspective as well as from the perspective of science teachers. So, Mrs. Chamora.
Good morning. My name is Susan Chamora. I have been a teacher for 37 years, and 31 of them have been in Nashua. So I'm the head teacher for special ed, and we, under the governor's Executive 64 order, had the opportunity to have some of our intensive special needs students come back around the end of October. We have been able to work with these students, both high schools. I actually said the number 23 the other day, and I was wrong. It's 18 students that we have, 10 at Nashua South, 5 at Nashua North. And we're doing all kinds of different types of learning there. We're doing in-person learning, where the students come to school and they have a teacher and paraeducators in the classroom. We have a teacher who is at home, who is Zooming into the classroom, doing a music lesson, an adaptive music lesson. And we have teachers who are doing synchronous learning, where they're working with the kids in the classroom, as well as they have a group of students who are Zooming into their classroom. We've had a lot of fun. The students, it's been so nice to have them back into the classroom. The consistency of seeing their teachers and paraeducators and their therapists Monday through Thursday, it's really nice to see the joy on their faces when they come in. The teachers have been very creative in the way that they've approached these students in the classroom, and it's really been a fun experience for all. We've had some challenges. special ed students, particularly the students that we're talking about, have a very difficult time keeping masks on. So safety in the classroom is paramount. We do have the students spaced, socially distanced, but when you have a few students that refuse to wear, and I don't want to say refuse, that aren't able to keep masks on for whatever reason. When students have to go to the bathroom, they have to make an announcement, kind of move all the students up against the wall, socially distanced, so that student can come through and go outside of the classroom to use the restroom, because we really are trying to have students not touching students and hopefully staying safe. We do have the proper PPE for the students in that for the students and the staff in that classroom, both north and south. These particular teachers are wearing masks, face shields, gowns, and gloves. So they do look like hospital personnel when they're in the classroom, and that's all day that they wear this protective gear. The students are a little bit confused sometimes. If you have a switch up in the classroom, they're not sure who they're working with, just because we're so covered up when we're in there. So that's been a little bit of a problem if we've needed to switch a para in or not. At Nashua North, I don't have the statistics for South, but at Nashua North, we've had 2 students who've needed to go home, who presented with COVID-like symptoms. Parents opted to quarantine the kids rather than have them tested, and they did keep them out of school for 10 days. We also had a teacher who needed to go home for another illness, but was contagious, and her doctor had to put her out of class for a while. So the 8 days before school went out for the holiday break, Nashua North's intensive needs program had to shut down and go remotely. And I know there was one classroom at Nashua South that the teacher had been exposed and had to quarantine, and they had to shut that classroom down also and go remotely. So we have had our challenges. When we've shut the classroom down and gone remotely, there was one Sunday that we had to shut down that we spent quite a good part of the day, Marcia Bagley, Dan Alexander, myself, Nate Burns, and the case managers, making sure that we contacted everybody, including the buses, the paraeducators. We had a tough time in some situations contacting parents, and had to call several times, because the last thing we wanted was to have them get their children up and ready for school waiting for the bus, and the bus didn't show up. So I think that staffing, as you know, we've heard at many school board meetings, the staffing can be difficult at times, but it's also necessary if people are sick in these times. We just can't have people coming in who have colds and coughing and things like that. And I think that everybody has really been vigilant about trying to keep the students safe and trying to keep themselves very safe. The Zooming into the classroom, our one teacher who's doing it right now, what I hear over and over is that it's great to see the kids when you can see them all on the camera, but if one of them steps out of the camera, we know there are paraeducators in the class that are overseeing it, but you worry about your student when they are, and particularly these students that I'm talking about, if you can't see them on the camera. The challenging behaviors have been a little bit difficult, because if a teacher has to stop, our teacher who's doing the synchronous learning, if she has to stop and work with a student who's having a hard time, then the paras are in the classroom working with the other students, but the students who are Zooming in really are kind of going without at that time, and we're doing the best that we can. But if the teacher and we've had some situations, we have some kids with pretty challenging behaviors, and that's why they're back in the building right now. Our speech therapist wrote up a little thing and said that she both does the synchronous and the in-person learning. She absolutely loves being in the classroom, as the teachers do, and she's so happy to be back in there. And the students are happy to see her when she does come into the classroom. And when she zooms in on the big screen, they're happy to see her too. I guess for us, it's been a wonderful experience having our students back. And then challenging are the staffing patterns when we've had to shut down and go remote, and also dealing with behaviors in the classroom, or if it's a student who is having a really hard time on Zoom, and if the parent isn't present, and we understand the parents are working, and you have to try to work with that child and calm them down, then the students in the classroom are then working with the paraeducators, but the teacher is solely focused on that one student. So the behavior is always going to be something that we're going to keep having to work with and tweak and figure out. We look forward to the day that we're all back in the classroom at 100%. I miss my students. I am a full-time case manager. Working with my students on Zoom that has been okay. I love having the morning, first part in the morning and in the afternoon. I don't have to pull students out of classes. And all day on Friday to be able to work one-on-one with students, especially now with missing assignments and the semester closing. We've done a lot of meetings late at night. We have many parents who are essential workers in hospitals, and the only time they can meet with us to do an IEP meeting is 6 or 6:30 at night. The team has been amazing. All of the teachers, all of the therapists, the principals, everybody has shown up for those meetings. And people have been completely understanding of parents' work schedules and happy to do that. So I guess maybe I'll get some questions later on, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak.
Hi guys. I'm the video guy, so I got to adjust the camera. My name is Jeff Leone. I teach the video production and broadcasting class here at the Nashua Technology Center. I've been teaching for 15 years. This is my 10th year here in Nashua. And we have been fortunate in the CTE classes to have started to do some hybrid learning. We started back in early November. A handful of classes have started, so I'm going to talk about the experiences in my class, and then I'm going to share some of the experiences from some of the other instructors wanted me to let you know about. So in video production, I'm going to talk about how it's kind of set up at first. The way we do it is, in a lot of the classes, our administration has been very supportive of us and letting us kind of come up with a schedule that we wanted to come up that was going to be best for our class. So some of these things are a little bit different. I'm going to talk to the way my class is set up. So I see my kids remotely on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. But then on Friday, I have the classes set up in 3 90-minute classes with 30 minutes in between each class. And I'll talk about why in just a second. My Monday administration was very good with allowing me to move my office hours to Monday. So on Monday is when I have my PLC and office hours to help students that need extra help. My classes are set up in 2 cohorts. So I really never see more than 7 kids on a Friday in each class. And I think most of you have been in my TV studio at the school. So you kind of know it's not a traditional classroom, so it is very easy in there to socially distance them. So when I'm doing any type of instruction, the chairs are 6 feet away. The kids are always wearing masks. They sanitize when they come in. So they do follow all of the safety procedures. When I do hybrid on Friday, the remote kids do not Zoom in. It's impossible. Because of the nature of the classroom, it just wouldn't work. So the way that I have kind of overcome that is the students at home that are remote that day will either have a lesson to do at home, a parallel lesson of maybe a video that I created that I'm going to be doing in person, but I created a video ahead of time, and they can do the lesson at home, or they're doing overlap work that was assigned earlier during the week. So some of the positives of doing the in-person, the hybrid learning was when the kids were here, I never felt unsafe. And I never felt the kids were unsafe. I think the building is clean, and we have actually been recording around the building, so we haven't been just tied to the TV studio. We've been out in the hallways, filming, doing some exercises to kind of spread the kids out a little bit more. So I've always felt safe. The students love being back here. And it's hard for me to get them to leave sometimes. I have to, come on guys, you got to get out of here so, we can get stuff clean for the next class to come back. So, they're thriving when they get here. And even the kids that are struggling with remote learning, when they get here, I see a total difference in them. When they're remote, they don't turn the camera on, they don't talk, they don't engage. But when they're here, they can't get enough of it. I can't wait to, use this piece of equipment or learn this skill or that. So that has been a huge positive with some of the struggling students. They love being able to apply what they're learning remotely. I've been very fortunate that the kids have been able to use their phones and like iMovie and stuff like that at home, so they can actually practice some of the skills that we're learning in class, but they love being able to use the high-end equipment that we're fortunate enough to have here in the studio. Like I said, the students who struggle with remote learning thrive in person. Some of my students have very disruptive surroundings at home. Some of them are helping their siblings while they should be in class. So it's disruptive. So they love a chance to kind of escape that and to be able to focus on their own instruction. Definitely easier to engage students with IEPs or kids that maybe tend to get distracted when they learn. So it's definitely easier to get them back on track when they're here in person. We build rapport with them. It's definitely a challenge to build rapport with students, over a computer. And it's difficult for the students because in my class they all love video production, but they may not be friends. But usually at the end of the year, they are, because they all share that common interest, and that's really difficult for the students to really build the rapport. So I guess that would be more of a negative, not a positive. But when they're in person, it does help them to build the rapport. Now, as far as the safety goes, and again, I'm speaking for my class only. The students obviously are wearing masks at all times. They're practicing social distancing. We do have plexiglass in between. If you've ever been on our TV control room, the stations are right next to each other, so we do have plexiglass dividers in between all of those stations. The student computers are all spaced out and they're in separate rooms, so I'm kind of fortunate with that they're not really on top of each other. The students are required to sanitize. There is a sanitizing station right near the door, so they are required to sanitize multiple times. And they've been respectful. I've never had an issue with a student wearing a mask. Even if the mask starts to droop down over their nose and they kind of tend to forget, we just say, hey, Johnny, pull your mask up, and they do it without any fuss. There really never has been an issue with that. And I told you that I had scheduled 30 minutes between the classes, and we did that purposely to clean and sanitize all of the equipment. Obviously, the kids are using microphones, they're using cables, they're using cameras, tripods, and the way that we do that is when they're done using it, they use the same equipment throughout the entire course or entire class. But when they're done, they put it on. We call it the used table. I didn't want to call it the dirty table, so I called it the used table. So they put it on the used table, and then in that 30 minutes, me and my para, Doug Beals, we will sit there and clean and sanitize all of the equipment, wipe it down for the next class to use, then we put it onto a cart for them to use. So that is how we go about using or sanitizing our equipment. That's really how my class is. And I know I'm unique, and I know not every teacher is going to be able to do and teach hybrid the way that I'm learning. So I'm very fortunate to be able to have the support to be able to, teach the kids the way that I'm teaching them. I wanted to share a couple other things from my peers that are also teaching hybrid. These are a couple of bullet points that they felt were important to talk about. Students who are reluctant learners were eager to come in and get hands-on experience that made the learning more relevant. Better connections with students were made when seeing them in person. Some were starting to leave their cameras on more during Google Meets now that they met others in class and felt more comfortable with everybody. And our HVAC, separate toolboxes store tools for each class so the kids don't need to, they're not using the same tools. And then when they're done, they are sanitized with a sanitizing solution provided by the district at the end of the day. So they're cleaned every day. Again, students are respecting the safety protocols. They keep masks on without question and follow social distancing guidelines. Students are arriving early. They're arriving early to get here for class. And like I said, I have a hard time getting kids to leave. And I even had a student who, because we do have busing for them. I had a student who missed the bus, and she walked here from downtown Nashua just so she could come to class, because that's how much she wanted to be here. I already said that. ELL students are feeling more comfortable asking for help and are willing to get extra help during office hours since meeting the teachers in person and developing a positive relationship. I felt more effective as a teacher. A lot of us are feeling more effective as a teacher, and it's helping our own mental state as well, seeing the kids in person. And some of our teachers have been able, I mentioned that I do not Zoom the kids in when I'm doing in person, but some of those teachers have figured it out and have been doing it successfully and been able to engage the kids. Wasn't easy at first, but once they figured it out, they were able to successfully implement it. They're working, all of us, are working very hard to make this happen for the kids. And one teacher said since day one, students begged and pleaded him to allow them to come into class. So those are some of the positives from the hybrid, but some of the not so positives. I don't want to say negative because it's too much negative talk now. But we don't see the same students each week, so that gets difficult. So some of the lessons can get drawn out. The challenge of making solid and engaging parallel lessons for the kids that do not come in and making sure they don't feel left out. That's a huge challenge, because we don't want them to feel left out because of the decisions that they have made. It's not their fault. Collaboration and teamwork are kind of lost a little bit. A lot of our classes are, the kids need to work together. And again, I'm speaking for my class in video and TV production. They work as a team, and it's very difficult to do that, when they can't get together. Even in person, they can't get together. And then remote students, some of our courses, the equipment is hardwired into the building. So some of the lessons, the competencies that the state requires us to teach, some of the remote kids aren't just not going to be able to do it. I can't take my control room and bring it to some student's house, so they just won't be able to do that lesson. Will they be able to learn it and learn the terminology? Yes, but they won't be able to actually do it practically. So that's a definite big downfall. Some certifications, that they need to use the software here that's in the building, but they can't get it at home. So some of those certifications are kind of lost on them. So, and then finally, keeping COVID front and center is a huge setback. It adds to your classroom management, and it's difficult because you're sitting there, you're trying to teach, but you're always constantly looking at, making sure your masks are on, making sure they're being clean, they're not doing anything that they shouldn't be doing. It's that added, to me, it's added anxiety of keeping that front and center to make sure that, they're learning the lesson I want them to teach, but they're also being safe. So that is all I have, and I guess we're saving questions for the end, right? So thank you for your time, and see you later.
Hi, everybody. I'm Keithlaus. I teach culinary arts. This is my 21st year teaching. And to save time, in the essence of time, I don't want to continue reiterating what Jeff and Susan had already talked about, because there are all a lot of the positives. And I've heard the same things talking with my students and fellow colleagues over at CTE in the North High School. In my particular class, it is kind of difficult teaching remotely, without a doubt. I am able to come in on Fridays like Jeff does, teaching hybrid. And I only have, talking through these maths is hard. I only have about 15 of my students that come in out of about 45, so about a third, depending on the day. And I don't Zoom in with my kids remotely on those days. So Monday through Thursday, I'm teaching live via computer on Zoom. And on Friday, I'll go in with the students who want to go ahead and come into that day. And it does become a challenge because there are students who are getting more than the students who are not going to go ahead and be in. And hopefully, if there's time, I have a little demo lesson that I'd be doing, so what it would look like synchronously, both live and in person teaching from that aspect. But it does bring up challenges going ahead and teaching simultaneously to live and students via Zoom as well. And I know we're going to take those questions for a little bit later on, and maybe after the demonstration that I go ahead and do. So I wanted to keep it short because I would just reiterate a lot of the stuff that was already gone ahead and being said, and I don't think we have the time for that today, to hear it over and over and over again. So Susan, I'll let somebody else come up then. Yeah, well, absolutely.
Right. Ooh, I got a shiny head here. All right, there we go. Hi, my name is Matt Froment. I teach physical science and astronomy. I'm also one of the assistant varsity football coaches here at Nashua High South, so I kind of bring a different perspective that some of the other teachers here in the building may not have. Let me speak to the athletics first. In August, we started meeting with the students and things like that, and we carried through a successful season. The joy on the kids' faces when they came in, you could see it. The energy was there. They were happy to be back with their peers. We were happy to be around them. We felt safe as coaches. The kids worked hard. We worked hard. Apparently, as a science teacher, you get dubbed King of COVID, and I was responsible for all the different strategies and stuff that we had in place, from the temperature taking to the keeping of the actual logs and things like that. All the kids lined up every single day, take our temperatures, did this, answered all the questions. They wanted to be there. And you could see the benefits of the kids being around their peers again. That being said, again, we all felt safe, but we were outside. Okay, easier to socially distance. The outdoor area, I think, allowed for that comfort for us. When we had to go inside, we had to get down into smaller groups, and then you could see, okay, hey, we got to make sure we maintain the social distancing. We got to do this. We have to do that. And we needed to be on them. But all the kids conformed and did exactly what we asked them to do. So I could see the benefit to that. Okay. Science-wise, I think you're going to hear from the other teachers and whatnot. Here at the high school, at the very least, each subject matter is its own different animal. One size does not fit all. As you see, CTE does one thing. Science is going to have their own separate issues. Computer classes are going to have theirs, as is English, mathematics, so on and so forth. Again, without a doubt, we want to be back in. We want to be with our kids, okay? I just have some of the points that some of my science colleagues wanted to bring up with the hybrid, okay, and the remote. First of all, coming to the hybrid, students and their ability to have one-on-one technology. There's a concern there, okay? It's our understanding that the kids that have Chromebooks now from the schools will not be allowed to bring them in school, okay? We're not sure how that's going to work. What are we supposed to do with those kids as we're trying to synchronously teach with kids at home if they don't have some technology with them? There's a large amount of extra work. Okay? There's a lot of work now with remote. I know one of our part-time science teachers, she said that she's putting in full-time plus just for her 2 remote classes. We're going to have to do demos for science. What does a lab look like? Science is hands-on, and in neither of these scenarios, you can be, or can it be effective? We have some creative teachers in the science department here, and they are doing wonderful things remote. And I'm sure we will do wonderful things hybrid. But if I'm setting up a science lab of some sort in the hybrid model, and I'm trying to do that to my live kids, what are my kids at home doing? I'm going to have a computer in front of me. Am I going to have to turn that around? Are they going to be able to hear me? Do I need to record it ahead of time and do a separate lesson for them later? What does that look like? Okay? I made a comment the other day in one of our meetings that the school board was interested in, well, what is hybrid learning going to look like? I don't know. I've never done it. Okay? I've been teaching in this district 24 years now, and this is new. I have some reservations. I'm nervous about that. Will I do the hybrid? Absolutely. Okay? If that's what you guys decide, and I'll make it work. I do know that right now, me personally, I'm getting good at the remote. Okay? As are the rest of our science department here. We are doing some wonderful things for our students. Okay? Do we understand the benefits of being face-to-face with them? Absolutely. Is that what's best for them? Sure it is. Okay? I do believe that the powers that be are going to need to make that decision. You know, what do we need to do? What is best for us? Is there a proper answer for everybody? No. Okay? One other thing that the science department had said is the engagement with the freshmen. I know that some of the teachers that teach the freshmen, because they have not been in the building, they have found that a little bit more difficult. They don't understand the high school process. I teach older kids with the astronomy class. My attendance is spot on. The kids engage, so on and so forth. But there has been difficulty with the freshmen because they just don't have that high school experience under their belt that the older kids have. So that's a challenge in and of itself because they just don't know the expectations. I think I've hit all the points. I'm sure you guys are going to have questions, okay? And I don't want to take up any more time, so thank you very much.
Hi, Susan Rourke again. So I think what we wanted to do at this point was to hear from people in different content areas, in different departments, who will talk about the benefits that they foresee and also some of the challenges that they're concerned about. And for all of those challenges that we anticipate, now is the time to be talking about them and troubleshooting so that when we get to the hybrid scenario, if the matrix that was approved allows for that, we want to make sure that we have all of our ducks in a row. And as Matt so eloquently pointed out, every single content area is slightly different. And we are trying to take a one-size-fits-all approach to some very, very different scenarios. High school is different from middle school, which is different from elementary school. Each content area within high school has its challenges, be it technology or staffing or consistency of instruction and curriculum. They're all a little bit different, and we would like for you to have an understanding of that. And at this point, it seems to me that some of our guests who are remote, who are on the screen, should probably have an opportunity to speak. So maybe Jane Wing from World Languages could speak?
Good morning. As Susan said, I'm Jane Wing. I think you can see that on the screen, those of you who are watching here on the screen. Head teacher for world languages at South. I've been in the Nashua School District for 27 years now, and I've been teaching since 1978. So you can do the math and figure out, whoo, it's been a long time. So this has been a year unlike any other. The World Language Department is just a wonderful, wonderful group of people, and our PLC time on Fridays has been such a blessing to us in so many ways. We've shared so many things, and it truly takes a village. We truly have helped each other learn ways to deliver instruction the best that we can given these circumstances. I will tell you that going into the classroom in a hybrid setting is very concerning for my department, because as much as we want nothing more than to be with our kids, I want to make crepes with them again. I want to, there's so many things that we do with them. But if I'm standing in front of a class with a mask, with approximately 30% of my students in front of me and the other 70% are not with me, I'm really concerned about being able to deliver instruction as effectively as I can when I have all of them together in one platform. We have found ways to develop a sense of community. Jason and I, some of you heard our conversation earlier. I was talking about how even on Wednesday, we do what we call Mouvement Mercredi, and we do a little exercise video at the beginning of class with French music, with French instructions, subtitles, and I always have a little task for the kids to do. Okay, today you're going to figure out how to say the word thigh, or today you're going to figure out the way to say opposite. And that does develop a sense of community. It also takes care of the kids' wellness. I'm very concerned about, part of communication is body language, seeing the kids, them being able to see me as I form my words. Even now, as I'm listening to people who are at Nashua High School South and wearing a mask, it is difficult to understand them sometimes. And that is one of my biggest concerns going into the hybrid model. I'm desperate to see the kids. I didn't get into this profession to sit at my computer all day, and I just can't imagine what it must be like for the kids too, having 4 classes a day, which is part of the reason I try to incorporate some movement. But I'm not convinced that I either want to come back with all of the kids in the building, or I want to remain remote, because I feel that that's the best way that I can effectively teach these kids, because I'll have them all together and I'm not going to worry about losing them. When I have them in front of me remotely, I've got them all. And I just feel that that is easier to manage. And I'm not wearing a mask. And I know that is what my department would like me to share with you, is that they prefer to have the kids all in one platform, either all together in school or all together in a remote setting, because that way we have equity. We certainly are safe, because I know we won't go back to school until it's safe for us to be there. But it just provides the best possible experience. And I am amazed at the new things that I've learned to do as an old lady with technology. I'm the one who has to ask my kids, well, why isn't my phone doing this? Of course, I have to call them to ask them because they aren't at home anymore. But I just really feel that having the kids in one platform for the World Language Department is the better way to go. And it has, in some ways, made us better teachers, because part of our charge is to teach them about culture and to really immerse them in the language. And it is amazing what is available to those kids through technology. And some of the programs that we've used, the Nearpod, the GimKit, it's just amazing how we've been able to immerse them. And they like it. They really do. Kids get it. They get technology. They miss each other. A big piece that I think we're missing sometimes is the wellness, and that's going to be a topic in our professional learning community tomorrow for World Language. We're talking about what we have learned about how to help maintain wellness for our kids while we're instructing them in a remote platform. We talked about it at the beginning of the year, just to make suggestions to one another, because we understand that relationships, rapport, as Jeff Leone was talking about earlier in his video class discussion, that relationships are really important, and that's a big piece of what we need to make sure we are attending to as we also deliver instruction in our content areas. So we prefer to be in one platform in my department, and we prefer not to have to wear a mask, and we want to see all the kids, not just 30% at a time. Thank you.
Jason, maybe you want to talk about PE and health.
I would love to. Well, first, I want to thank the board taking time out of your busy schedules and trusting in your teachers and your admin. We are sensitive to your time. I will keep this very, very brief. My name is Jason Roby. I'm the head physical education and health teacher here in the district for grades 6 through 12. So I work with the middle schools as well as the high school phys ed and health teachers here in the district. I've been teaching here and coaching here for 25 years. I've seen a lot, I've been through a lot, and I've learned a lot from some great leaders, some great people. I've seen many changes, but what hasn't changed is my passion for how I approach my job. And I can say that without hesitation. Each one of these teachers here today have that passion. I love seeing the excitement on a student's face when they apply a concept and they succeed. I love seeing the process of learning and how that takes place. I see it firsthand in a classroom or on a field or in a gymnasium. That's a great thing. You can see the students flourish, you see them overcome, you see them developed, and you see them adapt. You see that in person, but we're also starting to see that in a remote setting as well. And we talked a little bit about that earlier. So those characteristics are being witnessed both remote and in person. Some of our students have reported feelings of depression, stress, anxiety, motivation issues, resilience issues. All of these things can be attributed to being at home all of the time and in front of a screen. Our goal within the phys ed department is to get the students moving. There was a Harvard study that was put out that showed that even moderate physical activity, now when we say moderate, just so everybody knows, we're talking about a 1-hour walk where you could have a conversation with someone, or a 15-minute run or a jog, would produce a decrease in depression by as much as 26% per day. So that's a huge thing. We know that chemicals like dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, those things are released. Those chemicals are released in the brain when you are physically moving, which generates feelings of wellness. So what does a hybrid model look like in the phys ed world? Well, for us, one size, and you've heard this and you'll hear this continuously, one size does not fit all. For us, we would have the cohort A, the cohort B, the cohort C. We would see the kids 2 days a week in person. And then like Jeff, the other 2 days would be spent doing activities in the Google Classroom online. They would not be Zooming into the classroom. If our goal is to get kids up and moving in that hybrid setting, we would need to be with those kids that are in person, getting them moving while the other kids do their 2 days online in the Google Classroom. And then that would switch. Obviously, the students that select just remote, they would be relegated to meeting with us during our office hours, trying to find time to meet with those kids. They would not have a scheduled face-to-face time, so that would be a difficult thing. Some concerns that we had as a department is this would not be a return to normalcy. I think a lot of people think that going back to school, you flip the switch and everything is business as usual. One of the things that the kids might not understand and parents might not understand is, look, there's no lunchroom. You're not going to hang out with your friends. You're not going to converse in the hallways for long periods of time. You're not going to have close contact with a lot of people. And I think that's one of the things that, people need to understand. From a phys ed standpoint, it's how's the equipment getting cleaned? Who's overseeing that? We're not going to be seeing all the kids. Right now, we're seeing all the kids. And I can tell you that from March to January to now, it's completely different. We likened it to building an airplane in mid-flight. That's what March looked like. We were putting things together as best we could, trying to figure it out when we first started this remote piece, but we're getting better at it. And although it's not ideal, and trust me when I tell you, to a person, we all want to be back in our buildings. We all want to be in front of our kids. And although not ideal, we are having some success in building consistency with what we're doing. And the consistency is a huge piece of this puzzle. Just so you're aware, we polled our students. We polled 12 classes at North and South last week. And we posed this question. If you were not allowed to go into the locker room and change your clothes, use the locker rooms, or clean up, how likely would you be to participate in a physical education setting? So this is one of those issues that we're talking about in terms of, yeah, you can have phys ed, but we can't use the locker rooms, we can't change, we can't shower, we can't clean up afterwards. 15% of the students polled, and this is a little over I think it was 212 kids, 15% said they would be very likely to participate in a phys ed setting. 24% said not very likely to participate. 61% said somewhat likely, depending on which block I have PE. In other words, if I have PE first block, I'm probably not going to participate as much because I'd have to spend the next 3 blocks being sweaty, uncomfortable in my regular school clothes. Whereas if I had it 4th block, I would be more apt to participate. These are very real concerns that we would have returning to, a hybrid model and not being able to utilize the locker rooms, things of that nature. So while I tell you that we are excited to get back and see our kids, I think it's more important to stay consistent, especially because we're starting to get to a point where we're close, right? I mean, we're close to being able to go back without putting anybody at risk. And I think that's the thing we all care about. We want to teach, we want to be in front of our kids, but we also know what the cost could be. And so we are cognizant of that. I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for your dedication. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak. And if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them at the end. Thank you.
I just want to kind of piggyback on something Jason said. It reminded me, in the world language classroom, collaboration is a big part of what we do. We want the kids practicing the language by using it with one another. And that I'm concerned about how I'm going to do that when I have some of the kids with me and some of the kids zooming in. That management piece is going to be tough because we're not going to have technology in the classroom. So how I can get everyone interacting together, it presents yet another challenge. Again, I can't tell you how much I want to keep all my kids together. And that does speak to the consistency. That's a really key word for us, consistency. If we're in one day, out the next day, lack of consistency. Some are remote, some are live, lack of consistency. Materials, the CDC has suggested that we not allow kids to share materials. We can't be distributing materials in the classroom. It will take time away from our instructional time if we do have to distribute things, and I'm thinking more of a gym class or something, because then those materials will need to be cleaned before the next class can come in. Our schedule suggests that we'll only have 5 minutes in between classes, and I don't know how that cleaning piece, that sanitizing piece takes place that way. But anyway, I just want this to go away so that I can be with my kids together.
Sharon Saunders from ELL.
I knew you were going to pick on me right now. I just had a student message me and say, Miss, my work hasn't posted to Google Classroom yet.
Oh, no.
That's okay. It will post. It just posted on mine. So sometimes when you post an assignment for 10 a.m., it doesn't post until 10:01 a.m. And I have a very keen student. So I'd like to say one of the things that has become an enormous advantage in remote learning are the apps and the tools that we have learned about to communicate with our students. And I'm sure this is the same for Nashua North, but the staff at Nashua South have been phenomenal at using apps such as Talking Points and Remind to build those relationships with students. I know particularly the Health and Physical Education Department were the first department to fully embrace this opportunity in the spring to communicate with students. And for me, teaching ELL, it gives me the opportunity to communicate with my students in their first language. So when I am teaching remotely, I have my Google Classroom up. I have my Zoom open, and I always have my Remind app open. So my students can send me a message in the middle of my class to say, Miss, I didn't understand question 3. Can you repeat that, please? And I can send them a message in Portuguese or Spanish or Swahili to explain the instructions through the Remind app. That won't be quite so easy in the hybrid setting. I won't be able to have Google Classroom, Remind, Zoom, students in my classroom, and have that level of communication with my students as easily. But that wasn't how I planned to start my presentation. I just got distracted by my student contacting me to say, Miss, it hasn't posted yet. I did reach out to my department, and we discussed everything that has happened since March, everything that's happened since September. And Donna Luna, one of our teachers who previously taught at Pennachuck, I'm sure many of you know how phenomenal Donna is, took our ideas and put them together in a letter. And I'm just going to read from that because it's far more eloquent than I am. So one of the things that she talked about primarily was about attendance. And she said, in the remote situation, our attendance has been remarkably consistent. Even though students who were at risk when we were in the building continue to have issues, our attendance has been remarkably consistent. And through apps such as Remind and Talking Points, we have been able to contact those students directly and contact their parents directly to say that they are absent from class. So that has been a tool that we have been able to use to promote attendance. And one more point that Donna had mentioned about returning to the hybrid model, and I'm sure you've heard this before today. The hybrid model would reintroduce a bit of human interaction into our classrooms, in that as teachers, we could physically see the students, ensure they are paying attention, and have more awareness of needs for redirection. They would also have more opportunities to develop language skills with body language and cues. The majority of our students come from group-oriented cultures that thrive on face-to-face interaction and human touch. But herein lies the problem. They will not have that face-to-face interaction and human touch. They will not be returning to a classroom as it was in February 2020. Okay, that's what they think they are returning to. That is not what they are returning to. You've also heard this morning about how other departments have figured out a way that they can do hybrid. And this has been an ongoing discussion with our department since September. We know we have Fridays at our disposal. We have worked extensively with the United Way of Greater Nashua to provide resources for our students. The United Way has created an ELL lab within their building that we can utilize for small group instruction. But for us, this is a global pandemic, and we know high numbers of our students have had COVID-19. This week, we did a quick survey of our classes and the students in our classes that have had COVID-19. We have had students in every single ELL class with COVID-19. And what that does is it brings out that question of consistency. In our preparation for this meeting, Matt Froment had talked about a member of staff in a different colleague who in a different district who had to quarantine 3 times since September. And that is our fear, that we will be in, we will be out, we'll be in, and we'll be doing the hokey pokey like never before. And that is not a consistent educational experience. I think hybrid was difficult to start with for our students, but they have been amazingly resilient, and the skills that they have learned are second to none. I think our ELL students have the most phenomenal listening skills that maybe they would not have learned in the classroom. Mute yourself, unmute yourself, repeat that. Can you say that again, please? All of those things that they listen to on a daily basis. We talk about pronunciation and enunciation. And when we were in Zoom, Even with my accent, they can still see my mouth and they can still hear me clearly. I can't teach enunciation with a mask over my face. I know I can get a clear mask. It's not quite the same. Okay, and Jane had mentioned how many resources are actually available for language teachers. And there are resources available for us when we can actually demonstrate to our students what the pronunciation of English sounds should look like with your mouth and your tongue. We can show them that video, and then we can reinforce it in our classes. That is not easy to do with a mask. So for us, our biggest concern is for the health of our students, the health of our teachers, and the consistency of the education we can provide when we know we have students in every single ELL class that has had COVID-19. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you to all of our teachers who were unable to join us in person today, but who have been sharing their information. So I think at this point, I'll speak, since I'm sitting here already, I'll speak a little on behalf of the English department and I speak on behalf of my counterpart at North, Sam McElroy. English is the content area that every student is engaged in every year. Every single student who graduates from Nashua High, North or South, is required to take 4 credits of English. So we see all of the kids every year. And in some ways, we are the foundation for all of the other courses, in as much as we work with kids' ability to read and consume information, communicate information, and through their writing and also through their speaking. And an English classroom is a vibrant place. We're talking about life. We're talking about books that we read. We're sharing ideas and building off of each other. We're writing and peer editing. And at its best, a live English classroom with a full set of kids is a very interesting and exciting place to be. In the remote setting, we've tried to replicate that as closely as possible. What we've been able to do is establish that word consistency that we've been hearing all over the place today. We have fairly consistent attendance, actually, and we have decent engagement. With the younger kids, less good, because we've had a hard time establishing high school culture for kids who've yet to set foot in the high school. But certainly for our upperclassmen, their engagement is there. They want to learn. Learning is happening at the remote level because there is consistency. There's consistency of time. Every day, kids know that it's 10 o'clock. Oh, I have Mrs. Rourke's English class. Every day, they know who's going to be in that class. We've established a culture. We've also established friendships, because in remote learning, we've been able to create collaborative groups by using the breakout rooms. We use those liberally in an English class so that we give each group of students a task, and they break into their smaller groups, and they learn together and do close reading together and talk about writing together, and then we come back and we share all ideas. In education, it's called Think, Pair, Share. Remote learning is surprisingly adaptable to that type of learning strategy. We also have consistency in the Google Classroom platform. We all use it, kids understand it, and it can be interactive. And for instance, today, my class is going on right now. Well, I'm actually talking to them because I recorded a video yesterday afternoon. And they're watching the video that I put on Google Classroom about the section of the novel that we're reading. And they will then write questions in Google Classroom or contact me this afternoon. I'll probably end up meeting with a group of them during my office hours and clearing up anything that wasn't 100% clear to them when they watched the video today. And our office hours in the afternoons and on Fridays, that's another piece of consistency that works well for us and for the kids, most importantly. And there is something to be said, we've heard it before, but about the kids seeing my face and my reactions and my seeing their faces and their body language and reactions on the Zoom screen. I did a little experiment right before Christmas. I was teaching my Zoom class just as I am sitting here in front of this screen right now. And I said, I'm just going to put on my mask. And just being a foot and a half away from the laptop and speaking with the mask on, the kids found me to be less clear than when the mask was off. In a hybrid classroom, and I am so anxious to actually see and meet my kids. A little aside, the other day, the kids turned in Pride and Prejudice papers, and I printed them all and wrote up on them, and I decided that I was going to travel around Nashua and return their papers to them in person. They were waiting for me at the door, and we talked in the driveways, and they were very excited to see me. They said funny things like, "Oh, I thought you were taller," or, "Thank you so much for coming by." The point is, we're dying to see our kids. They're dying to see us, surprisingly. But we are concerned that in the hybrid classroom, where there are going to be rigid rules about where they sit, teachers are going to have to keep a seating plan of who's in the building, because if there are any issues with COVID, we're going to have to know who sat where, when, and on which day for contact tracing purposes. So kids are going to have rigid seating. They're not going to be able to collaborate. I'm concerned about the 70% plus kids who are learning remotely on any given day, and how I will be able to focus on them while focusing on the kids in front of me. That will probably take practice, and I will be fine at it, because that's what we as teachers do. We adapt. But I'm worried about the interim and the lack of consistency in the interim. But let me tell you about the two things that I'm most concerned about. One is staffing. And I know that there are some teachers in my department who have to be out for ADA purposes. They can teach remotely. But I also have some teachers who have children who live in other districts and are on different teaching schedules or hybrid schedules, or their kids are still all full remote. So those teachers, when they're on EFMLEA, they will probably have to be out, and I will have to find some sort of a substitute for them, a substitute who may not be well-versed in the courses that they teach. For instance, one of my teachers, her schedule is freshman writing, junior English, and mythology. Those are three entirely different content areas, and they both require, or all three of them require enormous, vast study and knowledge. The likelihood of my finding somebody out, in Aplatrack who fits that model is problematic at best. And the consistency of students who have teachers who are certified and prepared, who may all of a sudden be teaching, be learning from teachers who are not as practiced. That's a concern of mine in terms of delivery of instruction and curriculum. What happens when we have teachers who are calling in sick because CDC guidelines say that if you have a headache or if you have a runny nose or a sore throat, you have to stay out? And Keith Richard finds that we have, 10 people out that day and only coverage for 5 of them, and then he has to call the day remote. That could happen fairly frequently. I'm worried about those consistency issues, and the relationships that kids have with their teachers is very important. And if those relationships are compromised in any way because of staffing and schedules, that's problematic. My other major concern is technology. English classrooms are writing classes. Every single English class is a writing class. The way we teach writing is on computers. Right now, we have pretty much one-to-one. Kids either have their own computers or they're using school computers. When kids were in school up until March, we had Chromebook carts. We had Chromebook carts that we wheeled in and out of classrooms so that kids could have technology available to them. Or we had computer labs that we could bring kids to. Well, the computer labs would be, in the pandemic, problematic because of cleaning of equipment. And those Chromebook carts that we had have been disassembled, and those Chromebooks have been given to kids. And now we're hearing from IT that they don't want kids, for liability reasons, to be bringing those Chromebooks in and out of the school on a daily basis. So all of a sudden, programs that we have for writing, where we've been using the computer, and Google Classroom, where the computer provides materials and instructional practices, all of a sudden, those things are not available to a number of our kids. That becomes an equity issue as well. Certainly becomes an instructional issue. So these are some of the problems that we want to make the school board aware of. I don't know if there's anything that can be done, but if we can't have the hybrid kids coming into the building when they're in the building with computers, curriculum will lag, instruction will lag, and learning will slow down. And in particular, we're very worried about making sure that while we have kids in front of us, we're also paying attention to the kids who are remote. And our question really is, if an average of 70% of our kids are going to be remote on any given day, are the compromises that will have to be made to go to hybrid, for the 30% of kids who are in front of us, will they be worth it? We don't have the answer to that question, but we'd like you to think about whether or not that risk is worth taking. So those are the concerns coming from my department, and just please keep those in mind as you're making your decision on Monday night. And Amy Rich, did you want to talk about social studies?
I'm Amy Rich, and I am the Social Studies Department head for North, but these are things that I have kind of talked about in collaboration with my counterpart at South, too. But a lot of what the other core teachers have said applies for social studies as well. I think Nate and Keith are going to talk a little bit more about staffing at a macro level, but I know that there are so many people in my department who have been beside themselves upset that they will have to take EFMLA leave to care for their own children because they don't want to leave their kids. And they really don't have other choices besides doing that. But they know that they're going to be leaving their kids to some sort of a sub, hopefully, that maybe has some knowledge, but the amount of certified people in AppleTrack right now is not very high. So that, is something I wanted to say about staffing. The other thing about staffing too is that there's a lot of anxiety about people getting a call the morning of that we're actually not going to be in school today, we're going to be totally remote, and how that affects what you've planned for your lesson. So staffing is a big issue that I think we need to tackle. Something else about technology, everything that the other core teachers have said about technology applies for social studies as well. It is going to be extremely difficult if we cannot have every student in the room on a Chromebook, along with all of our kids at home on a Chromebook too. Social studies, we do a lot of things that maybe last a few days, where you're looking at a set of documents for 2 or 3 days. If you're in, your cohort in school starts on paper, and then they're at home, and then your at-home cohort starts online, but then they're in school and they don't have a computer to continue the work on in school, then that's going to be a real roadblock for what we're trying to do. So I think the technology and not being one-to-one is a huge issue for us. A lot of teachers in the core classes, social studies included, share classrooms. So, I know Keith spent a lot of time getting this set up. There's teachers who are going to have to shut down one class and in 5 minutes move to another classroom and get set up to then start a Zoom meeting, to log in, to start admitting the kids. And that's going to be a really big challenge for those of us who do not teach in one classroom all day, which is a fair number of people. The dynamic lesson plans, that's another thing some other teachers talked about that I just wanted to reiterate. We've figured out how to do group work in the totally online setting. Doing group work in a hybrid setting with kids in class is going to be very challenging and is a large part of what we do in social studies, and talking about issues and, getting kids to speak together is going to be challenging. Just in case, I think you might go see a classroom later, but I counted, there's about, 15 people in here, which you could theoretically have 15 kids in hybrid if none of the kids in that particular class chose remote, and we can max out at 31 kids. So you could have about this amount of people in a room that is less than half this size. There are some classrooms, I think most classrooms are probably about half this size, but there are some that are even smaller than half the size of this room. So thinking about physical space is another concern for people.
Hi, everybody. I'm James Graham. I'm head of the math department at Nashua North. But like everybody else here, we have had conversations. These are the opinions of both teachers at North and teachers at South, and not just the math department. We've had conversations with representation from pretty much the entire school. So before I start, I just want to share a quick synopsis of a fable you might have heard. It's The Goose and the Horse. And it's a story of a goose who's hissing at a horse and talking about how, as a goose, it is a superior animal because it can fly, it can use land, it can swim. And it can do all of those things, and so it must be a greater animal than the horse. And the horse says, well, yeah, you can fly, but you're clumsy and slow. You certainly can't fly through the air like a swallow or a lark could. And yeah, you can swim, but you can't live in the water like fish can. And you can spend time on land, but you can't, what you call running with your clumsy feet and your long neck isn't anything compared to what my running's like. Look at my form, look at my strength, look at my speed. I am a horse. I have mastered land, and I would much rather be the master of one of these things than be a goose. And hybrid is the goose. Hybrid is trying to do everything. It is a jack of all trades and a master of none. And when your goal is mastery of a subject, being the master of none is not what we want. So why am I bringing this up? Well, there's a lot of issues that we have that come up with hybrid. You've heard about some of them. We have tech issues. We have staffing issues. We have educational issues, consistency issues. And then just the logistics of making everything work and changing everything from what we currently have. We have a system in place, while not perfect, that is manageable. If we go to hybrid, I just want to lay this out, because a lot of people, they think when we go back, it's going to be a lot more normal than it is. And you've heard from my colleagues up here about how it's not. If we go hybrid, normally in the semester you would have 90 full days of class. Well, hybrid, we're going to have an early release schedule because we can't have lunches. It'd essentially be like opening a restaurant at school if we have all that many kids eating in the cafeteria. So we have to go grab and go lunch, which means we have this condensed schedule. So instead of 80-minute classes, we now have 60-minute classes, maybe 55-minute classes. It's shorter. So we have roughly the same amount of time that we're currently meeting with students in remote. We don't have 90 days in person. We have 72 because we're losing all the Fridays. So you're losing a fifth of your days right there. And we don't have 72 days in person with the students because we're going 50-50. So you have to cut that in half. So now we have 36 days with students. And then you have to factor in that there are going to be days that we can't run because of staffing, either because we have a bunch of teachers out with the ADA or EFMLA that's going to cause us to not open, or because we have enough staff, but we have so many people who are appearing sick on a given day and have to call in that we have to have essentially a snow day, remote day, where we have to call in that morning and have the entirety of Nashua scramble to find coverage and do all the things they'd normally have to do on a snow day to get their kids ready. And we have to have that ready to go. So those 36 days we have, and I'm sure our principals are going to talk to you more about how frequent we would expect this could potentially happen. Those 36 days might be 20. So we're doing all of this, we're making all of these changes for potentially 20 days of in-person instruction. And on top of that, we have to trade how well remote is currently going for a remote that's going to be shared attention from the teacher. So what do I mean by that? Well, right now I'm speaking to you on camera. I can look at the camera. I know where I'm focused. I can see the window of space that I have. You can, if you're looking at me on Zoom, you can see that I can see exactly where the end of my screen starts and ends. If I'm going to demonstrate something, I apologize if somebody was going to touch this later. If I wanted to hold something up, I could do that. I know exactly where it's going to be on the screen. When I'm teaching in person, I'm not going to be doing that. Right now, those of you here, you're watching somebody run a remote classroom. I'm sitting in place, I'm teaching to a computer. But the whole benefit of being in person is that you're going to be interacting with the students as close to normal as possible. Well, there's certain things that aren't going to happen, right? I can't do group work with students. I can't hand out manipulatives and things that are going to be hard to take care of, maintain, and clean up. So those things are out. So a big part of what I'm going to do and what other math teachers do is use the boards that we have in the room and demonstrate things on the board so that students can see. Now, in the classroom, we have a decent amount of space. So those of you on Zoom, what I'm going to do is I'm going to essentially teach a quick little lesson here and show you how this could be difficult. Now, we have a great mic set up right here. We're going to be working off the mic of whatever laptop is here when I'm in the classroom. So first off, I have a mask on. I don't know how clear I am. Hopefully I'm clear, but I assure you I'm probably clearer when I'm not wearing one. But then we're going to be relying on this laptop mic to pick up my voice as I go around the room. Now in the classroom, just to give you an idea, the board we have in the room probably goes from here to about here. It's big. Oh, I can already hear my echo's gone. I don't know if you guys can hear me, but it's probably gone already. I'm trying my best. As you can see, that's a lot of space to use that I could use on the board. I can write things out. When I'm on Zoom with the setup we have right now, I'm limited to here to about there. So now my board space is considerably lessened. So my instruction for the students in front of me just got a little worse because the amount of board space I have, I'm going to have to erase more frequently, and I'm going to try to have to limit myself to this space. Or, if I'm maybe a little more ignorant of that, or I'm trying but I'm not really great at lining up what's going on the laptop, I'm going to be trying to teach, and you're going to miss something because I'm going to write over here and you're not going to see it, or I'm going to write over there and you're not going to see it. So like if I was teaching a lesson on solving equations, for instance, I might want to tell you that there's really 3 things you want to focus on. That when we're solving equations, we're breaking apart essentially the expression on one side of the equation, you're breaking it apart. So you want to use order of operations, but you want to do it backwards. And so what I'll do is I'll turn around and I'll write order of operations backwards. And then I'll turn back around and I'll talk about how we want to use inverse operations. And so I'll write that down on the board, inverse operations, because I want to make sure that the people at home can see that so that they can refer to it when we're doing things later. And then I'm going to want to write that we want to maintain balance of the equations. So whatever we do to one side, we're going to do to the other. And I'm going to write that down. And I want to make sure it's here so that they can see it. And yeah, I might give an example, and I'll write it down on the board over here, and you can see that. But if I have to give another example, and I want to leave this up, well, now I've run out of room. And so I'm writing a problem that the people at home aren't going to see. And so these are the sort of things, these are the issues we're going to run into, is I'm trying to appease both the people in front of me, both the people at home. And I can do that for everyone when we're all remote, or when we're all in person and things are back to normal. But when we're hybrid, I'm aiming at 2 targets at once. And when you aim at 2 targets at once, you rarely hit either. And so that's kind of where we're at with hybrid. And it's a concern of mine because on any given day, if we have 41% of students who are going to be full remote, and we have 60% that are going to be split in 30-30 cohorts because our courses, because we change classes every block, we can't just go, all right, well, 60% of the students, why don't we just throw them all in together? That's close enough to 50%. Why don't we just run it that way? Because some classes are going to have more kids who are full remote than others, and some are going to have fewer. And we don't want to accidentally have a class that out of the 28 kids that are in that class, 25 of them chose to be in person, and now we have a class of 25. So the difficulty in our schedule is going to create some problems that are going to lead to why we have to keep it with that 30-30, 40% split with our cohort A, cohort B full remote. So on any given day, 70% of students are at the mercy of my awareness of the screen. And if they get kicked out and come back in, I have to hope that I can find them. I'm not sure if you guys saw up here, but Michael Whitehead went to go join our meeting in the middle of speaking, and it took a good 5 minutes to recognize that he was in the waiting room. So he was just stuck there waiting to get into this meeting, and we have a designated person whose job that is. Who was it? Thank you. So, like, if I'm juggling all of these things, I might not necessarily see that. And so you're going to have people who are remote. If you're having connection issues, I've had kids come in, come out, and I'm fine. I'm in front of the computer. It pings on my screen. I can see it. I can click it. But if I'm teaching, if I'm over here when that happens, who knows? I mean, maybe they just don't get it that day. So there are a lot of issues that come along with hybrid. We all want to be back in the classroom. I miss seeing the kids. I miss interacting with them. I'm a math major. I could be in a cubicle somewhere just working with numbers, making double, triple, quadruple what I make here. I like the interaction with people. That's why I got into this job. And I would love to be back in the room like that if I could. But we need to make sure we do it right. We need to make sure we make it safe for everybody. And I'd love to be back full when it's safe. Hybrid to me makes 0 sense because of all of the difficulties, and for what? For maybe 20 days in person. Thank you very much.
I shouldn't speak until I get there, sorry. So when Nate and I were setting this up, our goal is really to have teachers communicate with the Board of Education. So we really appreciate the members coming here, and we're going to step aside in a second. But one of the issues that Nate and I almost talk about daily, hourly, by the minute maybe, is our staffing issues. And Nate's going to share just a little spreadsheet here. This is what we're struggling to figure out. We know that we want to put safety protocols in place, but the safest environment for our students, for our staff, is to have our students with a dedicated staff member. All right. So what we looked at is these are, as of yesterday at, 2:30? This is what we had for teachers who have been approved for leaves. This is now outdated. We got emails last night. And we did not have a chance to go back in and update them. So what we do is broke it down by block too. So if you look at Nashua North, they currently have 16, well, as of 2:30 yesterday, 16 teachers who are approved for leave. And we looked at their schedule. So classrooms needing a coverage by block, you would see that Nate would have to find 8 Staff members for first block, 12 for second, 8 for third, and 9 for fourth. We do have everyday substitutes that we have hired, but again, the struggle is these students that are coming in for these classes on hybrid, we need them to be educated, not just to have an adult in the room for supervision. Nate had a little column there of some people who have inquired about it, but not added to the list. For South?
4 or more approved last night, so I'm really at 20.
So what Nate just said, in case you couldn't hear at home, is he had 4 additional staff approved just last night, so we'll have to update this list. Nashua South, we currently have 12, and I had another 2 approved last night. So as you can see, the same kind of classroom coverage needed by block. And the staff members that aren't teaching classes, where we checked off, those are some of our support staff, like guidance counselors, which adds in equity as well, because when students are here and their counselors aren't available, they're gonna have to go to another counselor that they do not have a relationship with. And the second piece of information we put up here is substitute coverage. We looked at last year's data, and on an average, North had 8 teachers out each day, and South had 7. And of those classes, on an average, we had 4 uncovered classes for each school, where we would have to find, I'll be honest, typically we would put the classes in the auditorium, lecture hall, with 1 staff member. We're not sure if that's going to be available to us with social distancing and the ability to do that this year. So we wanted to share this with you. I do have handouts here that our board members can take. Just please know that these numbers will need to be updated. It is 20 of 11. I know Mr. Claus was thinking about doing a demo, but I think we might want to do question and answer right now. Keith, if that's okay. I'm not sure how we want to moderate this, but I'm sure some of our board members may have questions. So,
Keith, I want to make a quick comment. This has been very interesting for me as a teacher anticipating going into a hybrid model, because I'm the remote student today. I can't hear anybody or see anybody who is live in the classroom, which raises another issue for me as the teacher who's going to have 30% of my kids in front of me, 70% of the kids at home, and that 70% are going to experience what I'm experiencing. I have no idea who's in the classroom, and I can't see what's going on there and hear the other participants in the class. That was a really interesting thing that I learned today.
questions from our board members? Sharon?
Hi. Okay. As a retired educator, I hear and appreciate everything that you've said today. I see the complexities that hybrid would cause. I think there is one item we could do something about and one that we have no control over. Hopefully we can revisit the ability for the students to bring their Chromebooks from home. Maybe it would require our purchasing protective cases for them. Whatever, but that's something I think we could look at as a district. The staffing is problematic, and I see no way it's going to get better. There are just not a lot of certified people out there who are interested in becoming a substitute in a pandemic. And I appreciate all that you said today. In a perfect world, I would like us to wait to go back to school until everyone has the option of being vaccinated and the numbers are low. I know that I'm not living in a perfect world, but I just want to thank all of you for the time and effort that you put into this. I think it's important for us to understand what it's like for the people who are in the schools every day. And I want to thank you all.
Any other questions for our staff, our teachers? Oh, somebody, Sandra. See, I was.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I have several actually, but the first one it sounds to me like that it is the consensus of your high schools anyway, that we should only have all in person or all remote. And it makes sense to me. I actually, you have similar problems to what the board has, in that one of the problems we have is that we aren't able to communicate with the parents enough. And truthfully, I feel that's a problem we've had. I wish we'd have heard from you guys a lot earlier and a lot more often, because you are on the ground doing this work. We are not. And so we don't have the day-to-day knowledge, experience that you have that we need desperately to make the right choices. And so for that, I can't even begin to thank you enough. And I hope this will go on. I hope that it will go a step further. I would suggest that that this similar presentations to what you have given us could be done on the public television stations. I did email yesterday to several people, but I didn't email Pete from public television, and I obviously should have. But I would like for you guys to discuss how we might do that. I know Ed Leicius does an education program, and I have done programming on 96 myself. It's not a hard thing to do. It's just a conversation. And some of these people, the last gentleman, the math, I think I'm sorry I didn't get his name, but he's and that's another problem. You see, people talk and they say such wonderful things, and then I can't remember who they were. So, but he would be wonderful because his presentation on TV for the parents have so many questions. They're just as overwhelmed as we all are. And so becoming a team, community, board, and educators is a critical component if we're going to do the best job we can do. Without it, we will never we won't maximize, just no question. So I hope that you will consider this TV thing. And I don't think it matters how you do it, whether you go with Ed Leicius or you want me to do it, or you do it with Pete, and Pete has some other way to do it. Just as long as we get that part of it in there. The other thing that I'm concerned about, that I keep hearing, and this may be my lack of information, because truthfully, sometimes the information the board gets is disjointed. And so you don't know, again, that's why this is so valuable, because we're hearing it right from the heart. We're hearing it from the nucleus of our educators, which is, you can't overemphasize how important that is. And so I keep hearing that with attendance and absenteeism, that they don't have to put their picture up. That they can, so then you don't know. They can come in, turn it on, show you their picture, turn it off, and then they're gone for the rest of the day. I'm not sure who that comes from, where that rule is made, but I go back to the strategic plan. The best part of the strategic plan for me was this part where it said that first policy changes would be analyzed at your level. Because you have the on-the-ground knowledge that we don't have. For us to change policies without hearing from you first, it really made no sense. And so I wonder where that policy is coming from, and how, whether it needs to go to policy or whether it needs to be first reviewed by the educators and then sent to us with a suggestion. But I think that's if I'm wrong, please tell me. I've been wrong before, and I won't be insulted. In fact, I would much rather you say to me, this is where you're wrong, this is where we might be able to help, that kind of stuff. But those are a couple of my my observations.
So let me take care of one of them first. Pete is here, and that's one thing, kind of like what Jane was just, if I were to turn the camera on, there's a camera right here that I'm pointing to that's recorded the whole session today, Sandra. And Pete is recording this for that purpose of potentially putting it on Ion Education. So
the other thing is, I spoke to Mr. Appleberg, the United Way, wonderful team player, wonderful community member. I can't even say enough. But I emailed him yesterday after the other meeting and asked him about getting extra computers for the schools. Now, I certainly wouldn't, I think Mrs. Giglio's thing about the protective coverings, I didn't even think of that, but that was a great idea, Sharon. And so, but I'm also, he said that I guess they actually, these machines they have are rejuvenated. They take the old one and make it into a good new one. I don't know. But he said that, I said, well, maybe you could just give so many. It's not enough, but But pulling him into, I'm sure you guys know it. I'm probably telling you something you don't know. You already know, and I'm the one who doesn't know. Please don't. There was no inference there that I know and you don't, because I may be stupid, but I'm not stupid enough not to know that you folks have your hands on the nucleus of our city's educational system, for which I can never tell you how grateful I am.
Sharon Saunders?
So if I can just speak to that, Sandra, Michael Apfelberg at United Way has been incredibly supportive of us throughout this whole process. I know I have delivered at least 25 computers from United Way, and my colleagues have done the same. Sometimes I feel like it's a revolving door of ELL teachers from throughout the district going into United Way and picking up Wi-Fi hotspots, headsets, computers. So he does have them there. He does communicate via Robert Chopra with to the ELL teachers, and through Keith and Nate as well, to share that there are computers there available for students in need. So those students, there are a few left, but I know that an incredible amount have already been distributed.
Well, go ahead.
Sorry, just to speak to that, one of the reasons we looked at distributing them so often is that when we do return to school, we wanted to make sure that our students still had access to the internet and access to computers. Our initial thought was those students could bring those computers into school, so they were their own computers, they're not school Chromebooks. But we were also told that currently the IT department does not want personal computers being brought into school either.
Resources, I'm sure you all know, resources are always a huge problem for Nashua. We budget, we're getting ready to go into my favorite part of the year when we go into budget. It's how do we slay Sandra? That's the way I look at it, because you have to, what are you going to cut? Every year it has been, what are you going to cut? So please know that that it is with great anguish that all of us on the board make these decisions. It is not a fun thing to do when you have to sit and know that you're denying needs that are legitimate and that should be taken care of. So please know that we don't enjoy that, but I don't enjoy it anyway, and I don't think anybody else does. It's miserable.
I'm looking at action items that the board members can take away from this meeting. We actually, I think all of us were really surprised to find out that the IT department was discouraging kids from bringing computers into school. I hadn't actually heard that until the middle school presentation yesterday or the high school presentation today. I think as far as the one-to-one piece on technology, something we asked about all the way back in May of last year, because we knew that this was going to be a disaster on the horizon. And I think I'm really disappointed in us, the board, and as a budget for not working harder to get that for kids. I think at the high school level specifically, there is no reason why kids shouldn't be able to bring devices into the building at their needs. They're capable of taking care of their stuff. I mean, I've got a 10-year-old and a 13-year-old, and their tech and their gear, when we go out to the car or riding to different things, is packed up in their little things like precious cargo. So I'm pretty sure high school kids can get a computer from their house to the school, or the iPad, or whatever it is at their preference. So on the board, I think we should probably consider an action item on that as a priority to let people bring whatever devices they need. Would the, I guess, show of hands or folks at home, would you agree that that would be a priority action item for whatever method we choose? All right, I'm seeing unanimous votes. So
I have a question. My question is that I don't think you can, I have to believe that IT has a reason for not wanting them to bring those. And so I wouldn't want to go to them demanding anything until we at least gave him the opportunity to tell us why that why that was done that way, and if he's working on resolving any issues that might be there as a result of that.
I think you're probably right, Sandra. I think that's a really good point, and I'm sure Greg, he's on top of all the safety items and things like that. It probably has something to do with a district policy-wide from elementary up to high school, and I think that's some place where we maybe should consider looking at things differently, which I'm going to circle back to that question in a minute. I guess actually, that's what I had for the teachers. So I actually asked this question to what I'm feeling in this room from the temperature of the room based on the classes that tend to be more hands-on and need that element versus the classes that are primarily typing-based or writing-based, English, math, that kind of thing. It seems to be a pretty solid split of the basic need of being in the classroom. I think that and you feel free to speak up and correct me if I'm wrong, if you think that the consistency seems to be on everyone's mind, along with student emotional needs. But it seems to be we're kind of split almost the same way the city is split in their 45-55 split on the desires of what we'd like to do. So I'm going to ask you guys, the principal, this can come from the principals or it can come from the teachers. The same thing I asked for the middle school teachers yesterday. If you had 3 options, one was to stay remote fully through the end of the year. We keep everything consistent, but everybody is remote except for the people in the fall under Executive 64. Number 2 would be to, at the semester break, make our very best effort, and I believe that this would be the most difficult at the high school level, to pair your live teachers with live students, remote teachers with remote students. Again, keep them consistent with your, try and keep things consistent. Or number 3, which we did have an excellent demo from a math teacher actually yesterday at the middle school level. She was exceptional, doing the hybrid method. And her thought was, she said there will definitely be troubleshooting, whether we start that now or in a month or in 6 months or next year. But she's going to have to do it to see it and troubleshoot it on the fly. So her thought was, I don't know what her thought was. I don't want to bring her into it. Do we give that hybrid method? So your choices are fully remote through the end of the year, try to pair up your departments, your cohorts, remote and fully in classroom, or give the hybrid model a shot. Is there a consensus with which the board could work from?
I'll speak for the World Language Department. I have some teachers who are the only teacher of their language. And within languages, we have 2 French teachers. I'm one of them. We have French 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and AP. So if you can't, for like a French 4 class, not all the students are going to choose remote, or they won't all choose hybrid. And so to have a teacher to teach French 4 in person at the same time that we have a French 4 teacher remotely, I just don't see it happening. Our department is too small for something like that to work. We would prefer to stay remote. German, I have 1 teacher, and she will be out on ADA, as far as I know. And so, the kids who are choosing to come back into school in a hybrid model, that she's going to have to Zoom into the classroom for them. So it would be problematic for my department because we're so small. Thank you.
Well, no, I was just going to ask a question. There is a third, if I misunderstood maybe, but if there seems to me there is a third, there are other ways to conquer this. Is there it seems to me that one shoe does not fit every foot. Obviously, you all have, like the TV guy, he was clearly, when you have to have hands-on, you have to have hands-on. You can't teach cooking remotely, I don't think. And so is there some way, it seems to me that we need the high school needs to have one set of rules, the junior high, the elementary. Then when you go into, let's just now close in on the high school. It seems to me that when you look at the high school, there has to be some judgment made by leadership, by the principals, and of course now we're going into searching for a new superintendent. But obviously those people, seems to me they need some freedom to say you can do this here but you can't do it here. Am I wrong? Sorry, I've got a big mouth, you've all noticed that probably. I'm sorry.
Well, so what you were just talking about, Sandra, one size doesn't fit all. Also, I'd like to respond to that and to what Mrs. Brown was saying about the middle school teacher. I just want to make the distinction between middle school and high school in terms of teaching hybrid. And I'm, excuse me, I'm delighted that this math teacher was able to demonstrate a great hybrid class. And yes, we all recognize if we need to come back, if that's what the decision is, and we will try to figure out hybrid. We're just not sure how smooth that will be, because the difference between hybrid at middle school and high school is that courses, for the most part in middle school, are year-long. And in the high school, about 90% of our kids are in a 4x4 semester block. So what you would be asking of us, that we're willing to do if that comes to pass, we have concerns about it, is on January 27th, not only are we learning how to teach hybrid, to two different targets, as Mr. Graham said, but we will also, the average teacher will have 3 entirely new groups of kids in front of them. They might be in different classroom than they were in first semester. They might be in more than one different classroom than they were first semester. They will be closing out first semester, which spills about a week into second semester in terms of grading and grading final assessments and doing final grades for those courses. And those teachers who will be teaching new kids in new classrooms may also be teaching 3 entirely different content courses from what they taught first semester. Maybe a teacher taught freshmen and sophomores first semester and is teaching juniors and electives second semester. So there's a lot to contend with and a lot of moving parts by going to hybrid on the 27th because of the peculiarities of how the high school schedule is set up. So I just want people to keep that in mind as well. We will obviously do whatever we're asked to do by the school board, but high school is different from other levels because we live by the semesters, and our semester 2 tends to look entirely different from our semester 1.
Do you think you have a consensus?
Can I say something? So, hi, I'm Lori Rothaus, and I'm the Director of Adult and Community Education. And the Nashua definition of hybrid is a different definition that a lot of schools are doing. So a lot of school districts, when they talk about hybrid, they talk about a cohort going into school a couple days, and then a couple days they're doing remote. Nashua is trying to do in-person and remote all at the same time, and they're calling that hybrid. And so when you look at, there's so many models out there, like Colorado has a phase-in model, New York State has a phase-in model. They're phasing in, but they're not trying to make it so complex, and it's simplifying it. So a cohort A might be in school on Monday and Tuesday, and then that cohort might be remote on Wednesday and Thursdays. So I think the phase-in approach seems to be an approach that works for people because it's not so complex.
Lori, are you talking about the difference between a blended synchronous experience and an asynchronous? Because what Nashua wants to do is called blended synchronous learning, which means we have kids remote and hybrid at the same time being taught by the instructor. There is another hybrid model where the kids who are in person the teacher is dedicated to them that day, the other kids do not Zoom in at the same time. And
Exactly.
I think that is something that is much more difficult to do.
And
Although the alternative is that we have to prepare 2 separate lessons for every day, one for the kids in front of us and the other for the kids who will not be with us. And I know there are teachers who are very concerned about that as well.
And can I just add, it really goes to my point about the parents. How many parents do you think understand that? How many board members do you think actually understood what you just said? That's a huge part of this whole puzzle. And that's why I think it's so critical for us to have a show where the parents can become informed too, because this is a whole new world we're in. I don't know how you guys do it. I give you great credit.
Mrs. Ziem, and not to be disrespectful or cut you off, could I actually circle back to the question I had asked a minute ago? I'd love to hear back from our English department if I could, if you're willing to give it a thought on it. And I've got a couple other teachers that have raised their hands. With referencing what the other teacher said, just a moment, I see Ms. Rothaus. Yes, I guess what I'm saying with when you have a 2 fully remote cohort, fully in-class cohort, that it would be the second of the 3 options that I was offering, I'm offering, that would be up for discussion. So would you be willing to give your thought? Would you rather have fully remote through the end of the year? In-person and remote services for different cohorts, or stick with our current hybrid schedule on the track we're on? And if I could have, I see there's a line from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teachers, and there's 5 teachers.
Jessica, can I just ask you a question about that? I had a teacher from the high school say to me off the record that she thought that we should go hybrid for until the end of February. I'm talking about remote learning when I say hybrid, okay? So until the end of February, and then go to whatever else we want to do based on what the statistics are then. So I'm not trying to throw a kink in your armor. I'm just saying that's another thought to be considered that I would like thrown into the dialogue.
That's excellent, Sandra. I recognize that. I think what I'm really trying to get at here is what people want to prioritize: in-person services or consistency of model. But go ahead, teachers.
My concern would be, we're trying to recreate the wheel again, and doing new things at the start of a semester could be dangerous and frustrating. And we exhibited those frustrations last March. We're finally getting to a point where we feel confident with what we're doing. The other point I would bring up is, what does that look like from a schedule standpoint for our guidance counselors who have to pull these kids and put them where there are teachers and where there aren't teachers, and how will that be affected when those certain teachers call out sick? And there's a lot of moving, I think, as we all have heard here today, and we've been hearing, there are a lot of moving parts here. And I don't know that creating more moving parts, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. At first glance, it doesn't feel like a good thing for me.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jason. And wearing my department head hat now, and also my teacher hat, I have 21 people in my department. I have 1 teacher and 1 teacher only who teaches mythology. I have only 1 teacher who teaches contemporary global literature. I have only 1 teacher who teaches sci-fi. I have only 1 teacher currently who's teaching AP Literature and Composition, and I could go on with a few more of my courses. The point is that for those we call them onesies, where we have only 1 teacher who both is scheduled and has the expertise. Because certification is a funny thing. Certification says you can teach English, but each of us is a specialist. I'm a Brit Lit specialist. Other people are specialists in sci-fi. Some people are specialists in writing. So with those onesie courses, it would be extremely difficult, perhaps impossible on, we're January 7th, to find a way to schedule the kids and the teachers so that those who wanted to be in school could be and those who wanted to be at home could be. We just, again, the notion of moving parts, I think we have too many of them. So if that option is off the table and then we're looking at going to hybrid or remote, I know from the English department's point of view, for consistency and with concerns about technology, not to mention all of the health protocol concerns we haven't really discussed today but exist, we would go for staying remote.
All year.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hi, Susan Shamora, Special Ed. Well, the first thing I want to say is there was one question posed, and the confusion in trying to get that question answered between the live audience and everybody in my Zoom classroom back here. And we were all trying to get up to talk, and everybody was sort of jumping in, which was great, and I think it was a perfect example of what's going to happen in hybrid. So that's the first thing I'm going to say. For special ed, we had to have meetings with every single family in this school system who had a child who was identified to see who qualified for Executive 64. As I said, the high school has 18 between north and south, and I'm just taking a guesstimate, but I think there's about 250 identified students between, excuse me, that's not right, 250. I think north has about 220 and south has probably about 240 identified kids, 18 parents. Their students qualified, and we have a lot of students who qualified whose parents chose to keep them remote. So I want to put that data out there. I think the students who need to be in school are in school right now. Staffing is a problem, and I think I can speak for the rest of my department who've already got the classrooms going. And a lot of our classes are year-long, we're going to keep our students here for the full year. Some situations, they're semester-long. I think I can say going remote is the way that they would want to go. I think it's going to be very difficult for consistency purposes to switch things up halfway through, and the students that really need it and the parents that really wanted it, their kids are already in school now. Thank you.
Susan.
Yeah.
Susan.
Yes, sorry.
I'm sorry. Can you just go? You went through those figures fast for myself anyway, because so you said there were 220 and 240 for 460, but how many did you say are actually attending?
18. Out
of 460. Wow. Thank you. Thank you. That's a big figure. But yes, thank you.
Again, my name's Keithlaus, teach culinary, and I talk to all my students, and consistency is a big thing. Talking to some of our colleagues in CT, consistency is a big thing. Although we teach hands-on classes, it's very difficult to teach hands-on classes from home. We can't get the full aspect of what the students are doing. However, the amount of students that will come in during a hybrid is very few, okay? My students, I've had students who told me they will stay remote unless we can still come in on the Fridays that I'm already coming in on class. And you look at that, the amount of time we have, so we have 55 minutes. Now you take the travel time out because we're having kids come from north or from south depending on where they go. So we're actually gonna be down, we kind of figured some math out, we're gonna be down to about a 40-minute class by the time the kids get there, get ready for class, try to have a lesson, and then get cleaned up. And if you ask us to try to keep kids entertained who are on a computer while we're waiting for our kids to show up live, it becomes more difficult. I've actually discovered I can do more with my students one day a week on a Friday for having them in for 3 or 4 hours than I can having them in for essentially 40 minutes twice a week. So I think that's really where a lot of CTE teachers' heads are at. I can't speak for every single one of them because I haven't talked to every single one of them, but the consistency and staying in this model we're at right now would probably be better, because we'll still get the kids who want to come in on that Friday where they're option to be able to come in. Any questions?
All right, I'm Matt Froman again, I represent science. Okay, Ms. Brown, you asked about consensus, and I think on an individual teacher basis, I mean, between the two high schools, there's probably, what, 200, almost 300 people that teach and support staff and whatnot. Are you gonna have a consensus? No. Everybody's gonna have their own opinion, personal, health-wise, things going on at home. For the board's sake, and I think if you want academics to be consistent, you want that learning, we're good at it, you stay remote, okay? If you're not so concerned about the academics, you're more concerned about the face-to-face, things like that, you go hybrid, okay? The board needs to be prepared for it to be messy. It's not gonna be perfect, it's probably gonna be real ugly going forward, because we're gonna have to learn on the fly again, okay? And it's concerning to a lot of us. I know just through conversations, I know that a couple of science teachers have looked into taking leave if we go hybrid. Through a couple more email conversations that I had last night, there's at least 2 more. So we do have to worry about that issue as far as the staffing goes. And that was 2 more that we weren't aware of yesterday when I spoke to our head teacher this morning, okay? I think in general, you'll find most of us teachers, we just want you guys to make a decision. This has been going on since March, okay? It hasn't been a mystery that we were gonna come to this at some point. We'll do what you guys pick, because that's what we do, and we'll make it work. Will we be happy with it? Some of us, yes. Some of us, no. But we'll come in and we'll do the best job for our kids, because that's what you guys determined that you wanted. And so I think for the well-being of everybody, we do need to figure out something, and nothing is going to be perfect, and I think some of us are trying to find the perfect answer, and there's none. This is lousy all the way around. But we'll do what's best, and we'll do it to the best of our abilities, because that's what you guys picked. So, thank you.
Can I just ask a question? Can you hear me now?
Yep.
I'm sorry, I'm computer illiterate is the truth. I was the typist. I'm almost 80 years old. Having said that, I'm wondering if we don't need to put the CTE in a box all of its own, because CTE is primarily hands-on, whereas you're not as hands-on. And so I'm wondering if the board might not need to look at 2 motions, one for CTE and one for you folks. And I would like to hear what Mr. Richards and Mr. Burns and what any of you who have thoughts on that. And I'm not trying to chase you away, Jessica. You're welcome to throw your stuff in too. So, but that's my question. Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry, I stepped in. It feels weird to look at people and on the screen. I'm Heather. I have to go, I'm so sorry, but I have kids remote learning at home, unsupervised right now, and I'm getting all these texts about everything in the world. So I just wanted to thank you all for participating in this and for inviting us. I found it very educational. And as a board member, I gotta be honest, I don't know what I'm doing when it comes to this stuff, just like everybody else. So I think what we've been craving this whole time is that feedback, that advice about, what does this plan really look like? How does that work for various departments? Because without that information, we're guessing, essentially, based on, I don't know, emails and public health. And so I really, really appreciate this. And I wish that we had been able to do it as part of the task force process this summer, because I think that would have been helpful. But so we're here now. I have a meeting with Dr. Mosley this afternoon at 1 to talk about Monday night. And so I'm really glad that I had the opportunity to hear from all of you going into that meeting. So he and I can talk about what kind of motions make sense to give some flexibility, like what Sandra was talking about, but also meets the needs of the greatest number of people. So hopefully we'll have a plan in place for Monday. But I just wanted to thank you. I didn't want to sneak out the back because that's rude. So I appreciate it. Yep. And I'm a crazy note taker, so like Jessica.
All of us, you should see us in our meetings. We're like,
I know, right? So that I can and think on the fly.
Feel free to reach out to any of us.
So thank you very much. I think I got everyone's names down. So I appreciate it. All right. Have a good day.
Thank you.
10-minute window too, just so we can run a little 10 minutes, doing some emails from people, stuff like that we need to get.
I just have one more follow-up question, guys. But go.
Yeah, I just wanted to answer that question from before. I didn't get the chance. All right. So before you had posed 3 options, I just want to add to the list Sandra's option as well as option 4. As far as, so it was essentially remote, but treat CTE separate, and I would even expand it. Yeah, I would actually expand it further to CTE and other primarily hands-on classes. So if there's like a science class that would prefer to go that way, or something else, or art or something like that, that needs to be
Maybe
hands-on.
the thing to do would be to have the principals get together with all of the teachers and decide who needs to go into the group where they need this hands-on to implement their learning process. But thank you so much for coming up and verifying that concern.
Yeah, so I would say as far as options that I personally would choose, but I feel like would be backed up by others, one would be fully remote with the hands-on option. That would be 1. 2 would be fully remote for everybody. 3 would be hybrid. 4 would be people who want to be remote, where we're juggling classes, because I don't think that last option is possible at all at the high school level, because we are specialists, not just in departments, but even just courses within the department. Like if our stats teacher or our calc teacher needed to be remote, I don't know if I'd have an in-person person who could do it to a level that I'd be comfortable, because like me personally, I haven't seen calc since I was 20. I'm 37. You know, but I've been teaching, like I'm a chess grandmaster that teaches checkers. It's going to take me a little while to remember how chess works. So that's kind of the issue I would have with that. Not only that, but it takes, 7 months from when we start making our schedule to when it's done, and then we still have lines of kids outside guidance who need to switch in the moment. So to decide in a matter of weeks we're going to completely redo the courses, the rosters, everything, I think would be an impossible task. So I would even, that option, as far as I'm concerned, is gone. It would be remote with the option for the hands-on people to be able to come in if possible, remote for everybody, hybrid. That would be the 3 that I would go.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
So I'm going to talk pretty quick because I wanted to make kind of a comment to Heather. She's being so nice with her time. That's actually kind of what I was kind of getting at with this consensus. That's kind of how I felt about from hearing from the elementary school teachers where they're already kind of set up in cohorts, the middle school teachers and the high school. I think we've been wrong in treating everyone's the same. So as you're talking about those motions, Heather, and I can give you a call later to talk a little more, I think we need to reconsider making this one size fits all, and specifically, not just at the high school level between, I think CTE, you guys need to be in person. I think it's really clear the student population that you serve, as well as the materials that you're delivering, are targeted for hands-on environment. The other classes are a little bit better served on that. I've got another question going forward, and Heather, I'll let you sneak out because I don't want to keep you from your kids. But it's specifically in regards to our struggling learners at the high school. It's not something that we like to do for equitability purposes, but we need to talk about the students who are retained or have already been, like for example, that are not on a track to graduate for the required classes, like Algebra 1, Civics, Health, English, things that kids have a really high fail rate at right now for those low edges. If we could even get maybe teachers to come in on a volunteer basis and serve those populations, it really could be necessary. Because I know right now, especially in the Algebra 1 department, there's some really hard served students and they need those classes to get their diploma. So, sorry, Heather, but I'll talk to Heather later. So that would be my follow-up question, maybe directed to the principals, and I know we're on a really short thing, so maybe if you make it super short. As I said, it's not typically equitable in our process, but nobody's getting anything fair right now. Would there be a consideration to target specific retained students or struggling students to get them the face time they need?
I'll wrap up on commenting about, I guess, about both of those things real quick and go from there. So, couple things. So the first, just if we're looking to just bring in CTE students, one of the things to consider if it is a board motion that's made, we would have to find a place for the kids to go the other 3 blocks that they have during the day. So because they're not able to necessarily travel back home and get back to school, so that's one of the things that would be a staffing concern that we would potentially have if a student's coming in for culinary or coming in for TV and they're mandated to stay there on a daily basis. There's only 5 minutes between class, so there's not enough time to get on a bus and get home and get back into their next class. So that's one concern that we kind of would have to think about in that regard. Not to say that it isn't something that we could overcome, but we definitely would need some staffing to be able to accomplish that piece. And then the other piece about bringing in targeted students, we've actually been doing that at North and South over the past month or so, and bringing students in on Fridays that we've kind of invited in that we noticed are struggling and failing 4 classes or not attending classes. So assistant principals and counselors have been working together along with teachers to get recommendations and bringing kids in, and we are finding that some of those kids are really being successful when they are with us and in the building. So I think that is something that we'd be open to looking at as well and kind of serving that population of kids. I do agree, it's tough, being in different models, but if we have a kid in front of us and they're able to get on a Chromebook and do their work with their teachers zooming from home, and we're there to kind of monitor, I think that's something that we could certainly look into do and do well for our kids, I believe. So definitely open to those issues as well. And obviously, like everybody said today, we're willing to do whatever it is that the board decides, and we'll support it and make it as best we can. And I have full confidence in our teaching staff. They've done an amazing job from starting last March when they were learning all this stuff to, all the gains in technology and everything that they're using in terms of apps and stuff. I go on and, pop in for observation stuff. I'm just amazed at what people have done and how far we've come in a short time since September to where we're at today. It's just unbelievable what teachers are doing with their kids. So I'm really appreciative of it. I know Keith is as well. So I do want to thank everybody for being here today, giving up your time. I know some of you missed classes for this, and I truly appreciate you doing that. And I think it was an important conversation to have today. And look forward to continuing the conversation and figuring out what we can do to work with our kids to get them back here as soon as possible. And hopefully at some point we're back to normal and getting them here 100% of the time. But truly appreciate it. All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
Great job today, everybody.